Everyone, and welcome to the latest Lunchtime Bites webinar from the ICBE Aviation SkillNet. Today our presenters are executive coaches Jason Kenny and Declan Dore from KD Corporate Wellness. Jason is a fitness and nutrition specialist, sports psychology coach, and has a degree in training and education. He's an active competitor, having represented Ireland abroad, winning several world, European and Irish titles. He's also a martial arts instructor with over 30 years experience. Declan is an inspirational trainer and executive coach. Having recovered from a life-threatening brain injury where he was told he would possibly never again walk, talk or get the use of his face back again, Declan now teaches tools for mental wellness to survive and thrive in both your personal and professional lives. Today's topic area is life tools for adapting to our new normal. This 40-minute session will address how you can retain a command over the aspects of everyday life that are within your control and develop coping mechanisms for those that are not. The ground moves for today. Jason and Declan will present for approximately 30 minutes, finishing up with a 10-minute Q&A. Everyone is muted, but we really do encourage you to submit questions or comments via the chat function, which we'll call out at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded. If we experience problems with broadband, please be patient. Declan and Jason will first of all turn off their webcam, and we'll just wait for a few seconds for it to rectify. And without further ado, I'll pass you over to the trusted hands of KD Corporate Wellness.
Thanks a million, Owen. Yeah, we're having issues ourselves today. It seems to be, as my kids call it, laggy. They're playing their computer games. They get really upset over it and start really getting angry with the screen. Yeah, unfortunately, we're experiencing a little bit of it, but you know what? At least you can hear us. That's the most important thing. Listen, thanks again for having us. We hope that you get a small bit out of it today. I suppose myself and Declan, we kind of came together, I suppose, our kind of two unique stories kind of sums up, I suppose, who we are as individuals and I suppose how we've taken kind of adversity and kind of turned it around and made it our own. And sometimes life throws a few curveballs at you, but it's really up to you to kind of delve further into it. I suppose I'll start off with my own story, really. A couple of years back in about 2015, I ended up blown up out of all proportion, really. I had been training for many years, doing many different things involving sport and recreation and all sorts of things. But over time, I spent most of my time helping everyone else and not taking time for me, unfortunately. And as a result, I ended up becoming, I suppose, the person on the left here of this picture. It got to a point where it was no longer about how I looked, but rather how I felt. I was very much sick and sick all the time. So it got to a point where I had made a decision that this is it, enough is enough. I can't continue this road. If I do, I'm not going to be around long enough to see my own kids grow up. So it was back in the summer of that year, I decided to go to Kilkee, the Costa del Sol, I suppose, for us. And it was one of the weeks that were particularly good. So I decided to head onto the beach and do what I do best, I suppose, bring the kids to swim and so on. And on my way down, I remember heading towards the water's edge, and there was a group of girls sitting down. It turned out there was a group of girls from my boot camp. I was so embarrassed. I remember turning around, grabbing the child, kicking and screaming and bringing them back up to where we were seated, put a t-shirt back on and bringing them back down, and then obviously chatting to them. But I was becoming very self-conscious of it. That was how I looked. But what really upset me the most was that particular week I ended up spending in bed really sick, and I was just sick of being sick. Head colds, flus, colds, bugs, it was all the time. My skin was terrible. I just felt awful of myself and I just didn't feel good. So I said, that's it, enough is enough. So in that September, I decided to make a change. And this time I took a different approach. I said, I know how to train, but this time I need to train myself to eat correctly and to rest correctly. So what I did was I got back into the kitchen and started planning, preparing, and taking back control of what I could do with myself. And within 14 weeks, I made a transition from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. For me, it was really powerful, and it was not even so much about how I looked, but rather again, how I felt. And that same year, I remember in December, colds and bugs came into the house, and I didn't pick up any of them. And thank God, and touch wood, to date, I've had very, very, very little experiences of bugs and colds. So if anything, it was a massive factor just to increase my immune system. But that's enough about me. Declan has a very powerful story. Declan went through quite a lot of trauma as well in his life, and he was able to completely flip it on his head, to excuse the pun. So I had to go to Declan.
Good pun in saying that. Yeah, I suppose, firstly, thank you all so much for joining us here today on this webinar. And briefly, my own story is back in 2004. I was very fit, healthy, athletic. I had played underage with Limerick. Sport was my life, and I was doing my final exams to become a qualified electrician. So I had 2 exams left, and they were all falling on a Thursday and a Friday back in 2004. And I ended up actually fracturing my skull, shattering my temporal bone. I ended up in the regional hospital in Limerick being told I'll probably never again walk, talk, or get the use of the right side of my face back. And that was all due to the damage I caused to the brain. So fast forwarding a couple of years, you can see the middle picture there is my mom. She's amazing. She was very, very good to me, in fairness, through the whole experience, as I'm sure any mother would be. And I was 21 at the time. I'm kind of giving away my age now. I'm close to 40. And so, you know, it's very important, you know, what we're trying to get across here in these, you know, webinars that we do, in particular in this webinar, is, you know, life tools for adapting to the new normal. And for me, I was trying to adapt to a new normal because I wasn't in a good place at all in any way, shape or form. You know, having to learn how to walk, talk and get my face back was a whole new adjustment to me and my life and my lifestyle, because sport was my life. My friends in sport was my life, and that was gone. And like, it took me years to get back on my feet again properly. But, you know, what I found was good nutrition, good lifestyles, particularly the mindset. That's what pulled me through, thankfully, was developing a good, strong mental mindset. And, you know, went traveling the world, went as far as Japan, went to the healthiest island just off Japan called Okinawa, learnt their lifestyle, came back, applied it to me, and my life just completely transformed, because I just completely looked at, you know, life differently. Then it was started off with your mind, the nutrition, how you speak to yourself, all that sort of good stuff. So, you know, what we're going to get across here to you today is life tools for adapting to our new normal. Like, there's so much after happening in the last couple of weeks for everybody, and there's 3 things we're going to touch on here today, and that's bringing awareness to what you can and can't control. We're going to go through the mental toolbox and then the emotional toolkit as well.
Yeah, so I suppose we are aware of the world that we've just experienced. I suppose what's happening now is we're coming out of it almost. I mean, on top of all the tragic that's been there, I mean, you have all the economic, social issues that are going to be on top of us. But you know what? People have had an opportunity to press the pause button, to slow down, to start to reevaluate and to start to work with what they have. There's obviously a greater appreciation for the likes of nature and family and, you know, things you didn't have time for in the past, now suddenly you do. So, you know, I think that's something that's so powerful and so positive that we can now carry forward into the future. Whatever things throw at us, we can just press that pause button ourselves internally and stop and move on and deal with it as issues start to arise. So I suppose one of the most important things for us is how we start our day. Our morning routine is so important. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to us. This is just an example here you'll see of what we do on a regular basis. I mean, it's all about really grounding yourself and starting a day on a high. If you can command that first hour, 2 hours of the day, then you've won the rest of the day, and it's yours, you own that. It's a case of detoxing, staying away from the technology and all its digital, and living your world rather than living in somebody else's and making that comparative. So for us, you can see here, we start off, we breathe, we hydrate, we're stretching or exercising. It depends really on our format. regardless of what happens, we'll always move around and we're moving with a purpose. And when I say that, it's a case of not just simply exercising, but actually physically active. You're constantly moving from one part of the house to the next, in, out, moving around. You're constantly cognitive of that fact that you have to keep moving throughout the day, and also stepping away from PCs and computers and so on. Getting our proper food in nutritionally, so that we start the day high again with the body. And Declan spoke about diet and nutrition, which is really important for yourself, your brain health, for us, for your immune system. And to journal just before you begin your day, just to write a few things down. I'm going to say, look, this is what I'm going to do today, and to be positive. Just write the first thing at the top of the list that you know you want to complete and complete today. And that's kind of a gist of what we do in terms of our day.
And a good tip would be to slow down the night before, at least an hour before bedtime. Try your best, if you can at all possible, to turn off your devices. And I know for most people, including myself, there's some nights there I might just go in and relax and just watch something on the phone. But I do notice the difference the following morning. I don't know if you can relate to this, where you might feel a bit groggy, a bit tired, and it's to track back to what you've done before you actually went to sleep, because it's such an important process to get a good night's sleep and to wake up refreshed. If you're on your phone or your computer or even your TV, you're actually slowing down the process of going to sleep. You might be asleep and think you're asleep, but the mind is still activated and things are still going. So think of what you feed yourself mentally, especially before you go to sleep. Like I have a routine now every night before I actually fall asleep. I'll actually have my eyes closed, but I'm always looking at, feeding my mind with a positive attitude before I even go to sleep, because your mind actually is working away, especially the last 5 to 10 minutes of what you've watched or what you've read or what you've taught as you're falling off to sleep. So just be very mindful of that, of what you're doing to yourself or saying to yourself before you go to sleep.
And a very powerful one is to put something, an affirmation basically, stick it on the mirror. I call it accountability mirror. You either put in a little goal that you want to do or something you want to complete for the day, and stick it in the mirror in the bathroom. And when you go in the morning, you basically are going to see that first thing. They're small little things, but they do matter. And it might sound silly, but you know what? It gets you through the day, and it gets you through a process, and it creates a lovely routine for you. So I suppose the biggest issue with a lot of us is we have a tendency to kind of talk to ourselves in a negative form. Oh, I can't do that, or I'll never be able for this, or you get that whole imposter syndrome. And I suppose if you look at the little fact here, because I suppose these are kind of 3 little facts, and 77% of our thoughts daily are negative. And that's a powerful thing to think about, because we criticize ourselves quite a lot, and I suppose the term that's coined is the inner critic, and we always have and it's a good thing, by the way. It can be a very positive thing too, so it's not entirely negative, but it has a tendency to cause that little elevated level of stress, which in turn releases this chemical called cortisol, and cortisol again is a good thing, because that stress factor, when that's released, obviously if there's a car driving up behind you, you need to hit your brakes quick or something, that's what that's there for. But at the same time, if we have that constantly turned on, we're never switched off, and our stress levels stay completely on a high, and eventually that starts to affect us internally. So it's a very, very important thing to be very cognizant of.
So the next one is, how do you speak to yourself? Jason kind of elaborated on it there instead of going into it a little bit more deeper here, but like the key component is to just be aware of how you speak to yourself. When something happens to you or something is said to you, where do you go? Do you go into the inner critic, as Jason said there, or do you actually try and elevate the positive side of you, the positive voice, as I like to look at it? It's like, again, going back, I know my own story. I had a choice to either listen to the negative voice, which was, Declan, you're never going to recover. Declan, you're never going to walk. Declan, you're never going to get your face back. I had a choice to either listen to that and accept that, or I had the choice to either go, okay, Dick, you take control of this situation. And I started to visualize and see myself walking, talking, moving, getting my health back and recovering fully, and which thankfully I have today. But it took me speaking to myself in that manner rather than staying in the, oh, poor me, or poor this, or poor that. And yes, I did stay there for a short while, but I realised that wasn't serving me and it wasn't moving me forward. So ask yourself that question. What way do you speak to yourself when things happen to you or for you, or something is done or said about you? What way do you react inside in your own thought process?
Yeah, so I suppose this is really important for your mental health, and it does matter to you. And you know, what we need to look at is focusing in on solutions and not the problems. So you got to look at that kind of inner critic and say to him or her, whatever it may be, you say, what is it you're trying to tell me? What is it you're trying to put in front of me right now? To almost take a step back and talk to it. It might sound, again, ridiculous, but it actually really works, and it's been proven scientifically as well, to actually name it. And one of the greatest things to do is to ink it, don't think it, brain dumps, is to put those negative energies down on a piece of paper. Also, you can do this with positive stuff as well, and you can start to separate the do's and the don'ts between the two. And when you have an issue and you write it down on a piece of paper, you can actually take that piece of paper afterwards, tear it up or hold it in a ball and throw it away. It almost feels like physically you've got rid of that that problem. One thing that we always do and we always harper on about is breathing. And Declan is one of, he loves to talk about this one in particular, and he's 100% right. We have to breathe as humans. The minute you stop, obviously it's game over. But to take in deep breaths and to fill lungs and to volumize those lungs, it helps to regulate the body. It increases the oxygen flow. It just floods your system with almost a calmness. And if you recognize the breaths that you have when you're nervous, when you're angry, or when you're happy, and when you're rested, when you're calm, you'll notice there's either an elevation in speed or how it slows down. Is it sharp? You know, these are things you need to start recognizing yourself within your body.
And especially one thing with the breathing there as well is, if you're going through a situation, which we all are now at the moment, and this might sound really easy, but just try it out, because my God, it's served me so much for the last couple of weeks and in everything that's been going on, is when you're going through a stressful situation or something's going on for you, is to go back to that breath, go back to the breath and breathe in, and then try and release whatever stress or whatever pressure is going on for you. So it's like visualizing, where is the pain that's going on in my body, or where is this negative process going on in my mind? Breathe into it and go, okay, and then release. And take a big breath out, like you release it out. It's very, very powerful. So just try that out for your own self. And emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is when you're able to calm your frantic mind after encountering a negative experience. So remember that. That's what emotional resilience is really all about. So whatever could be going on for you, it's about trying to calm your mind after encountering, you know, a negative experience, whether that be, you know, someone has said something to you, or something has happened, or what's going on for us now at the moment. And emotional resilience is not about winning the battle. It is the strength to power through the storm and still keeping the sail steady.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so important. Yeah, so it's a case here about finding balance. Again, you have to connect, I suppose, those emotions and how those emotions are kept up inside you, and how you're firing them back out to other people, and how we use them within our lives. You see, if it's a case that we have a certain amount of, I mean, we've probably all experienced this. You might have had an argument at home, or, you know, you've had a hard time going in into town or into work, or a long distance, whatever it is, and you have traffic, a build up of traffic. You know, your energies at that point are kind of, you know, elevated, and your emotions are high. And the problem is then we carry them with us throughout the day. We need to realize that was one part of our day that we need to separate from what's going forward to the next part of our day. And if we don't separate those two, we're going to carry that same process, and it's just going to gather momentum all the way to the rest of the day, and you're in big trouble. So gratitude is one of the big things that we love to do, and it's one of the most powerful of them. And if you can develop that in yourself, I think what you'll have is an appreciation of life in general, but an appreciation of who you are and what you do. So you can actually manage your emotions. You can't manage somebody else's, but you can manage how you react to that as well. So you've got to look at it from that point of view as well. Again, almost looking at it in third person. So, you know, sometimes we spend a lot of time stressing over things, and I suppose, like, one of the examples is if you end up getting a phone call, or you look at an email late in the evening or late at night, and it's an email that you weren't expecting to get. It could be a bit of bad news, it could be anything, it could be financial, it could be whatever it may be. And you go to bed. You go to bed worrying about it, you go to bed thinking about it, and you end up losing the night's sleep. That's not good for you, because the next day it's going to filter into the following day. The thing is, you can't do anything about it right now. There's nothing you can do about it right now. And while I say it sounds easy, but it's not. It's something you need to constantly train yourself to do. And if you don't, then it's going to overpower you, and it's going to ruin the rest of your day and that night, obviously.
And one thing when it comes to the tips on this is, the first one we put in here was boundaries, separate spaces for work and family. Now, it's a huge, huge thing, and for some people, they mightn't be able to actually do that. But if you can, like, I remember when this whole lockdown came in, and myself and my partner, she had to work from home, and obviously I'm working from home now as well. And the key component to keeping our sanity was, at the start of this lockdown, we both set our boundaries together. We both said to each other, okay, I'm going to be here at this time, I'm working at this time, have food at this time. We set up these boundaries, and then we set up me time, which was, I know I need Declan time every so often. And my partner, I know she needs her time. So we both set up those boundaries. Now, we don't have any kids at the moment, but the thing is, if you have kids, Jason might be able to speak a bit better than this, because I know he's got 3 young, energetic kids. And it's just important to set up those boundaries. And the key is putting them in place. If you haven't put them in place already, just slowly start to suggest this to the people around you.
Yeah, so I suppose it's very important. The boundaries is a massive thing. Obviously, your time management is another thing. So you put in place, and you let them know. You kind of be open and communicate with the rest of the family. You put a structure on them. You put a structure on yourself. You separate yourself from them so that you can actually do your work, and you give yourself a dedicated time for that. And it does allow you to be more responsive. And one of the things that we talk about as being reactive or responsive, and as humans we have a tendency to be very reactive because we're trying to get something done. We have a deadline, we need to do it, and boom, we react on that. And it's, I suppose the outcome can be very, very can be nasty, can be, you know, it can be the wrong outcome for you, and you go back and you realise afterwards, once everything has calmed down, you've met your deadline and things are sent off, and now you have to face I suppose the crime, really. So the other thing is being that perfectionist and being able to ask for help. If you don't do that, then you're going to set yourself up to fail straight away. You need to be able to delegate and say, look, I can't do that, and be able to manage your time correctly and prioritise things where they are and be more productive. And the more productive you are, it doesn't mean that you're being extra busy. You actually end up freeing more time for yourself at the end of the day. Now, if we look at COVID-19 and what it has done to us, and I mean, it's one of the things that has forced the world into a stop. We've literally locked down. Now you have to work and combine family life and together, but you're trying to find that lovely alignment between the two. And if you can do that, you've won your day, you've won your week, and you've obviously succeeded straight away.
So what you can and can't control, you know, the word can and can't, you know, if you slice off the T, that's my attitude on things that can be done. I don't see, I'm a big believer in solutions rather than problems, and can and cannot. You know, so, but that's something you might have to develop. It could be something that you have to actually start become more aware of, that, okay, I want to actually look at things that I can do rather than things I can't do. And sometimes there's things that are just out of your control and you can't actually do anything about it. You know, like this COVID-19 at the moment, it's out of our control. There's nothing, unfortunately, we can do about that. But here's some things we're going to share with you that, you know, you can't control. And on the left here, you can see there's the treatment. The way you treat other people, you can't. The first one was can't.
Sorry,
Yeah. You can't control. So things you can't control at the moment is how other people treat you. It's just something you can't control. And then other people's actions, you can't control that. And when it comes to the mind, other people's beliefs, other people's thoughts, if you think you can control that, it's the wrong way to be looking at things, because you can't control the way people will think and act and react. The climate, weather, natural disasters, the pandemic, and of course you can't control the past.
Yeah, and I'd nearly add to that you can't control the future either. None of us were expecting a pandemic, and it probably wasn't even in our mindset or our psyche up to now, and it will certainly be a topic like health and safety is going forward. So it's crazy really how the world has changed and how things are going to change for us. But I suppose the things you can do, and it goes back to what I said earlier on, you can control yourself. You can't control how people are going to treat you, but you can treat other people with dignity and respect. It will come back to you. Trust me, it will come back. Letting go of ego is another thing. That pride, my way or the highway, basically, and it's that perfectionist coming out in you. And it's one of those things that can pull us all down. We all have it, no matter how much you fight it, it's always there. We always feel proud about something we do, no matter what it is. It could be making the best cup of tea, to designing the best PowerPoint presentation, to whatever it may be. It doesn't really matter. We all have a sense of pride in ourselves, and that's an important thing too. Obviously your actions towards other, and that comes back down to your emotional intelligence, your resilience, how you treat people. And it's a case of looking at the world through their eyes and understanding things are going on for them too. And just having that right mindset. Declan spoke about mindset earlier on. And you know what? Being in the right mindset and being able to do things. And when Declan was obviously in the hospital bed and people were around him saying, you can't do this and you can't do that, or he's not going to be able to do this, not going to be able to do that. If he'd listened to those people or listened to those conversations going on outside, externally, he would have obviously retracted back into himself and not be here today, sitting down and being able to communicate with the rest of the world. So obviously then being productive, where do you put your energies? You have to prioritize that. Where are you going to put the energies in the things you can't control, or are you going to put your energy into things you can do right now, this minute? What can I do right now, this minute? And that's a really powerful thing to remember.
And here's just some additional tips before we wrap up, is to try to focus on your present actions and reactions to stay grounded. One thing, as Jason was speaking there, what was coming through me was how you treat others. We all have this built up energy inside us at the moment where we just want to get out and go to places that we love to go. Simple things like going for a coffee, going meeting a friend, maybe going to the pub for a pint, whatever it might be. And what might be happening is there could be that built up of anxious energy inside you, and you take it out on someone, not physically, but hopefully not physically, but verbally, you'll take it out on somebody. And if you find you're doing that at the moment, where you're taking things out, you're doing it, that's where you need to remove yourself from that situation if you can. And when I say remove yourself from the situation, it could be just literally going outside the door, and the key is come back to the breath. Breathe in and release and let go of that stagnant and built up energy that might be, causing this reaction that's happening to your loved ones around you, or it could be happening, whatever might be happening, and you could be doing it to yourself inside here, is to try and focus on your present actions. That's key. And as Mr. and Jason are big believers in the breath, come back to the breath and release whatever might be going on for you.
Yeah, and change your environment. So you can do that while you're sitting and you have to get some stuff done, but give yourself some time slots as well to do it. Just set a little alarm on the computer, even if it's there, alarm on your phone, alarm on your watch, and get up every 20, 25 minutes, whatever it is. Up, walk around, grab a glass of water. I would encourage you to try and step outside if you can, take a bit of fresh air, and just for the change of environment, because it's so powerful for you, and it also takes you a small bit away from that sitting down at the computer. We all miss the social connection. We all miss the bit of banter. We all miss, listening to what's going on in other people's lives. And quite rightly, Declan said that a lot of us now are quite sick of looking at computer screens and, trying to create things to do and be more creative. But you know what? People have started to do other stuff with their hands and started to almost dig deep inside themselves and recreate that childhood, I suppose, innocence almost, and to have a bit of fun. But I suppose the most important thing with a lot of this stuff, and just go back to some of our tips here, is to really look inward. And I think that's what we're harping on about. It's not to try and focus in on the outward stuff and the stuff that you're that's affecting you, it's external to you. Trying to see how that external stuff affects you. You try and process that information that's coming to you, and you deal with that, and you put those little strategies in place, and your outcomes, you can't predict your outcome. There's so many factors involved. There's a multiple of variables that you're not in control of, and so many people can be a part of that equation. It's just too difficult. Even this morning, we were laughing again. It's down to the internet and us being, things been laggy. But you got to work with what you about being present in the moment for delivering or for, I suppose, being the best that you can be at that very moment in time.
Yes, so these are, hopefully you can take one or two things away from this webinar, and that's it's our main goal anytime we do a webinar or do a talk or do a series or whatever it is we might be doing with groups of people, is try and pick one thing that you have learned from this webinar and apply it to your life if you can today, straight away. Not try and learn everything that is being put here to you right now. Try and take one thing, and maybe the one thing could be coming back to your breath. Maybe the one thing could be realizing that you need to look inward. That things are happening, inwardly, to look in here for the answers rather than looking outside there. Just loads of little things, but hopefully something has struck a chord with you here today, and you can apply and you can take action on from this. There's loads of other tools and techniques that we always get into and dive into, but hopefully you can understand we've only got 30 minutes that you're here today. And, Owen, we'll open it up to you if there's any questions or if there's anything you want to put to us for the final few minutes.
There is. Thanks very much. We've about 10 minutes for questions, and there's plenty of them in, but if there's any more, please just send privately to me in chat or to the group in total. So, Jason, the first one, and I'd be eager to hear your answer as well. What did you do that enabled you to lose that much weight in 14 weeks?
Yeah, 1 second, I stopped this share here. Yeah, so I suppose the most important thing is to get back into the kitchen. We have a tendency to kind of, look, you can work out for an hour and that's it, but it's the other 23 hours you've got to concern yourself with. So I've got to fuel myself all day. I've got to be, focused in on all of, I suppose, the nutrients that I'm putting into my body and stuff like that. So I suppose for me, it was just a case of planning and preparing. I would start maybe on a Sunday night. I'd kind of look at the foods I needed for the week. I'd plan it out, and then I'd cook them up. I'd cook them in bulk, and I'd freeze what I could freeze. And I'd take them out the night before then, have them there defrosted, and then I'd be ready to go the following day. What that allowed me to do was to stop me picking at stuff, stop me to go around presses, and now that I'm hungry and if I got caught up in meetings or caught up with clients and stuff like that, and I wasn't allowing myself enough time for me, and that was the main thing, was I also decided, look, I'm going to give myself some me time as well. So I incorporated my exercise, my nutrition, and my whole mindset had to change. I had to marry the three together or it wasn't going to work. And I really committed to that. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting back into the kitchen and working on the recipes and the food you're eating.
Yep, rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yeah.
And another one around focus, which I think I find quite interesting. So I've been good with my boundaries, routine, etc., but I'm finding it hard to focus on getting any work done, which I find frustrating. Do you have any tips for focus?
I think it comes back to time blocking. it's got to come back to time blocking, because if you get too focused, as in I'm going to stay laser focused here now for the next however long, what happens is you just lose sight of what really needs to be done. You're just getting lost in the things to do list or whatever it might be. Try and block your time to maybe 30, 40. I do 45-minute blocks where I know for 45 minutes I've got to get focused for 45 minutes, and for that 45 minutes I'm going to get X, Y and Z done. And then I'm going to take a 2 or 3 or 5 minute break where I go for water. I come back to my break, I shake it out. What I do is I re-energize my mind and my body. And I know I'm going to be doing that every 45 minutes, because once you can do that, it resets the mind, it resets the energy button, and it gets you back on track and what you're meant to be doing.
Great, thanks very much, Declan. Another one here. What would you see as being some of the biggest emotional challenges you'll face when we return back to everyday life and society, but operating with a whole new set of rules?
We're going to fight over this one. Wow.
There's a mini thesis question.
Yeah, it is, to be fair. I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. I think life as we know, or new rather, is going to be very different. Saying that, I think there's going to be a lot of positive changes. I think some of the emotional challenges will be I suppose the fact that now we can communicate with each other, things will be integrated, I suppose, very slowly from where you sit at your desk, how many people can be in an office at any one time. I suppose, obviously, then the fact that you're probably now stepping away from home again, you're not going to spend as much time at home. Saying that, I can't predict how companies are going to work it, whether they're going to give them 3 days at home and 2 days in work, or they're going to be a full 5 days and back straight into it. I think what needs to happen is we need to start to pull from what even we were discussing here. I think we need to start looking at things that we can cope with and we can work with. I think every day will be a very new day for us. But I think certainly the world, as we know, I think is a little better. I think we're going to be a little bit more cognizant of who we are as individuals. I think we'll be putting a lot more plans in place. We'll be more aware of the fact that now we can go and meet and greet loved ones. Like, I haven't seen my parents in 9 weeks, and I can't wait for that. I'm really looking forward to that. So there are things that we won't take for granted anymore. I suppose the fact as well that we can communicate over technology it has been a powerful tool, but there's nothing like the human connection. And being able to physically exercise in a gym and just to get back into our communities, part of our sporting worlds, and watch games and take part in events and things like that, and weddings and all these events that have had a major bashing, I suppose, as a result of it. And of course the pubs, I suppose everyone is looking forward to that. Emotion, I think most of the Irish nation is a little bit stressed because the pubs aren't opening first. But all jokes aside, I think the real reason is as humans and as Irish, we like to shake hands. We like to.
I was just about to say the shaking hands and the hugging. I think is going to be, for me, is going to be the biggest. I love shaking hands and I'm a hugger, so I'm just very aware that. I see it even now with people I know. It's like, if I meet someone or whatever happens, I won't shake hands or won't give them a hug now. And even for me, that's been a very tough thing to deal with. It's like, because the first thing I'll do is I'll embrace someone and I meet someone. Not everybody, but most people. And now I'm beginning to realise, okay, that's actually not cool to be doing anymore, because people will have a reaction to it. You nearly have to ask for permission now if you want to shake someone's hand or give someone a hug. And so I think that's going to be something that people are going to find hard, the huggers out there and the handshakers out there.
Yeah, and I think you touched on earlier a little bit of the gratitude jar getting filled as well, which is quite a positive one. And we've time for one more question. A lot of the things that you've mentioned are they're very powerful tools, and you've discussed them in terms of me doing them myself. And I'm just wondering whether there's a role for involving everyone in the family, or if your partner or your kids or people who are in your environment in them. So it's not just me sitting meditating in the corner with chaos elsewhere. Is it a good idea to try and involve everyone else in, from the breathing exercises to the winning the day at the beginning to eating better and looking after your nutrition rather than me doing it by myself?
Of course it is. Yeah, it's very important to try and include everyone. But for me personally, I think the most important thing is you got to start with yourself. Because the minute you start with you and you start leading the way, the family or people around you will start coming in, or they won't come in. You start to include them. Whereas if you try and force something on someone straight off the get-go, you're going to have resistance. 99% of people will resist. Whereas if you start off, you lead the way, you take the actions, you put in the systems, the processes, the boundaries, whatever it might be, or the breathing exercises, the family or the people around you will start to either want to join you or they won't. And if they don't, that's okay. The key component is you got to look after and do what you need to do first.
Yeah, Declan's right. It's there's a knock-on effect quite regularly. It happened to me when I was doing the whole body transformation. I just started doing it, and obviously at the start, people are kind of going, "Oh, what's he up to now?" But it's fine. I mean, that's what you need to do. You need to park that as well for a few minutes and go, well, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this stuff done. And eventually people start to flow into it. The house starts to look at, I suppose, more nutritional foods, what they can do themselves in terms of exercise, and they start to enjoy it. It becomes a little bit of fun. The other side of it is, just going back to what Declan was talking about there, I suppose, the thing is with family and friends and work colleagues and stuff like that, not everybody's into what you're into. I think that's number one. You got to remember that. And again, that's to speak to yourself internally. I remember when I was doing it, I used to get frustrated with people. Why can't you do it? Why are you not doing what I'm doing? It makes perfect sense. It's so easy. But it's easy if you've made that change. If you've taken the chip and you've flipped it over and you've decided, I am going to do this, that's no problem. But if somebody hasn't done the same, then you're forcing your opinions, your ideas on them. While what you're doing is 100% perfect and positive and healthy and really good for your well-being and mental health, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to buy into it. But here's what I will say. Currently, a lot of people have opened up to all of this because they've needed a space to go. And a lot of people are taking on board the meditation, they're taking on board taking time out, taking time away from the PC, taking time to just engage themselves. They're looking at alternatives, how they can exercise. I've never seen so many clients looking for alternative options, from body weighted exercises to working with just 2 dumbbells. People are constantly looking for a way that they can get around it. When you're forced into a situation, you have to act upon it, and you can only do the best you can do with what you've been given. So there's a fabulous knock-on effect. So I would suggest, like Declan said, you be the leader, you start it, and everyone else will flow in with you.
And sometimes the people who are closest to you, that you love very dearly, can be the hardest knockers of what you do. So it's important to be focused on what you want to do first, and focus on what you want to achieve and your goals, what you want to get out of whatever you're going to do.
Thanks very much. You've probably just saved me from making a dramatic mistake in trying to implement new rules in the house. So I'll be taking that on board. Jason and Declan, thank you very much. They're amazing insights. It's all very concentrated and takes a while to kind of unpack some of what you've told us. But due to demand from previous webinar series that we had with Declan and Jason, we'll now be relaunching our Monday morning series, with the first kicking off on Monday the 25th for 4 weeks outside the June bank holiday weekend. And for further information on that, please contact Maeve at the ICBE. The video and slides will be uploaded to the ICBE later on today, the website later on today or tomorrow. And finally, thanks to all attended, and look forward to seeing you at the next ICBE Lunchtime Bites. Jason and Declan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Owen. Very much appreciated. Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Owen. Appreciate everyone.